The rocket that carried the first Americans to the moon was designed by a man who, 25 years earlier, had worn the uniform of the SS. He built weapons for Adolf Hitler. Those weapons were assembled by concentration camp prisoners, thousands of whom died doing it. And when the war ended, instead of standing trial, he was quietly flown to America, handed a new life, and put in charge of the space program. His name was Wernher von Braun, and he was not an exception. He was one of more than 1,600, because after the Second World War, the United States government ran a secret operation to bring Nazi scientists into America, and to erase their past so completely that most of us were never meant to find out. This isn't a theory. There's no debunk at the end of this one. It's all real. It's all declassified. And it sounds insane precisely because it happened. This is Operation Paperclip. Spring 1945. Germany is falling. And as the Allies close in, they realize the Reich's most valuable asset isn't its gold or its factories. It's the minds inside them. Germany had spent the war building things no one else could. The V-2, the first long-range ballistic missile, jet engines, nerve agents, advances in aviation medicine years ahead of anyone else. Two powers wanted that knowledge, the United States and the Soviet Union. And both understood the same cold truth. Whoever captured Germany's scientists would inherit the future of warfare and of space. The Soviets launched their own grab, rounding up German experts in the night, and the Americans decided they could not afford to lose. So a program was born. At first, it was called Operation Overcast. Its purpose? To find the best German scientists, get to them before the Russians did, and bring them back to work for the country they'd just spent years trying to defeat. There was only one problem. Many of these men weren't just scientists. They were Nazis. Some had done things that, by any measure, should have put them in front of a judge. And the American government knew it. Here's where the operation got its name, and its darkest detail. When American officers found a scientist they wanted, they'd take his security file, the one documenting his Nazi ties, his party membership, sometimes his war record, and they would slide a simple metal paperclip onto the top of the folder. That paperclip was a signal. It meant this man is valuable. Look the other way. Give his past only the most cursory glance. In November 1945, they made it official. Operation Overcast became Operation Paperclip because there was a law in the way. In a secret directive in September 1946, President Truman personally approved the program, but he drew a line. No active Nazis, no war criminals. Anyone who had been more than a nominal member of the party was to be excluded. So the agency running Paperclip, the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, simply rewrote the files. Incriminating records were removed. Party memberships vanished. War records were softened, edited, or erased. Historians would later describe it plainly as evidence laundering. Men described in their own paperwork as ardent Nazis were retyped into harmless opportunists. The rule said keep the Nazis out. So they made the Nazis disappear on paper. And more than 1,600 scientists came to America. Their new files were spotless. Their real ones sat in a drawer. To understand what was really being covered up, come back to von Braun. He was brilliant, genuinely, historically brilliant. As a young man, he dreamed of spaceflight, of reaching the moon. But to build rockets, he needed a patron with money. And in Nazi Germany, that patron was the army. He joined the party, he accepted a commission in the SS, and he became the technical director of the V-2, the most advanced weapon of the war. But here is the fact that the paperclip was designed to bury. After Allied bombing, V-2 production was moved underground into a tunnel complex called the Mittelwerk. The labor came from an attached concentration camp, Mittelbau Dora. Prisoners were worked, starved, and killed assembling these rockets in the dark. The numbers are staggering, and they should never be softened. It's estimated that around 12,000 people died building the V-2, thousands more than the roughly 9,000 killed by it as a weapon. It is one of the only weapons in history that killed more people in its construction than in its use. And von Braun knew. He visited the Mittelwerk more than a dozen times. He later called the conditions repulsive. A memo in his own hand from 1944 describes him traveling to the Buchenwald camp to select prisoners for the workforce. He always insisted he was an engineer trapped in a monstrous system, that he never ordered a death. Maybe that's true. But he saw it, and he kept building. 9 years later, that same man stood in Alabama, an American, running the rocket team for the United States. He designed the Saturn V, the largest, most powerful machine humanity had ever flown. And on July 20th, 1969, it carried Apollo 11 to the moon. The dream he'd had as a boy came true, under an American flag. The world celebrated him as a hero, and almost no one mentioned the tunnels. For the 25 years between the war and the moon landing, and the years after, until his death in 1977, his past was simply not discussed. Von Braun is the famous name, but Paperclip reached everywhere. Arthur Rudolph, the man who managed the very Mittelwerk factory where prisoners died, came to America and became the project director of the Saturn V. He received a medal for it. Then, in 1984, decades later, U.S. investigators finally examined his war record. Rather than face prosecution, he agreed to give up his American citizenship and quietly left the country, a director of the moon rocket, leaving in the night to avoid a war crimes trial. Hubertus Strughold became known as the father of space medicine, the science that keeps astronauts alive. His research had roots in Nazi aviation experiments, and he faced allegations tied to human experimentation at Dachau. He was never charged. There wasn't enough to convict. He was celebrated in America for decades. And Kurt Blom, a man who had worked on biological weapons and been tried at Nuremberg, was hired to continue that kind of work for the U.S. military. The pattern is the same every time. The knowledge was too valuable, so the past was set aside. For years, Operation Paperclip lived in the world of rumor, the kind of thing that got you called a conspiracy theorist. And then the documents came out, the National Archives, declassified files. It turned out the crazy theory had undersold the truth. It really was a secret government program. It really did bring Nazis to America, and it really did erase their crimes to do it. So sit with the uncomfortable part. The space age, the satellites over your head, the medicine that lets humans survive in orbit, the rockets that still fly today, was built, in part, on a bargain. America decided that the future was worth more than justice. That the men who could win the Cold War were worth more than the people they'd stepped over to become useful. And maybe, strategically, they were right. That's what makes it so hard. But here's the thought this one should leave you with. Operation Paperclip wasn't exposed by a whistleblower with a grudge, or a grainy photo, or a theory. It was exposed by its own paperwork, filed, stamped, and stored by the government that ran it. It was true the whole time. Which raises the only question that really matters on this channel. If a secret this large could sit in plain sight for decades, dismissed as paranoia, until the files proved it real, how many others are still sitting there right now, stamped declassified, waiting for someone to actually read them? This was The Hidden Signal. Subscribe, we read the files so you don't have to. And tell me in the comments, knowing the cost, was the bargain worth it?